Right, we're kicking off now. All two of us. Hopefully, there'll be some more people arriving. But whatever. This video will. When I edited it. When I have edited it down, I'll put it on YouTube. And also probably next month on the Internet Archive. Right. Well, thank you for coming, whoever you are, wherever you are, and hopefully some more people will arrive. A couple of things I'd like to comment on today. There was a real rape case decided. There's a gang of two of us. There was a gang of groomers, a grooming gang, sentenced to a total of 221 years in jail for abusing 15 girls. All of them, all of the perpetrators Asian. Grist to the mill for Mr. Robinson. This is the sort of thing that should never be allowed to happen, and it was due entirely. Oh, it's just one of us now. One of you now. It's just due entirely to political correctness that this happened. So when I was growing up in the 1960s, this sort of thing would have been impossible, because if underage girls were being systematically sexually abused by any group of men on a stake or wherever, the locals sort of whipped up a posse and administered summary justice. But these things do happen. They're very difficult, and these odious individuals have been given not a day too much in prison. There's also I also have, before I embark on the dissertation about rape statistics, last night on Facebook I read a sad announcement. Michael Patterson has died. Michael Patterson was Professor Emeritus at Leicester University in 1991. I'll get the exact date here. June the 21st, 1991. At that time, he was teaching theatre in Ireland, in Northern Ireland, and he was arrested. He'd been accused of rape, a truly bizarre allegation by a student, someone with whom he had no physical contact at all. You'll find his version of events on the timeline, and undoubtedly accurate. I'm not sure whether this student was obviously not right in the head. You'll see that after he was bailed and returned to England to await trial, she made further allegations against him. They brought in the Director of Public Prosecutions for Northern Ireland himself to interview her. She was obviously not right in the head, but what happened afterwards is equally outrageous. He did actually let slip her name. I haven't found her making any other allegations. She appears to have disappeared into obscurity, but it's truly bizarre. There was some truly bizarre cases on the timeline. Lorraine Miles, who accused her physiotherapist, is another one. Another student, Catherine Clifton, in the United States, who went to considerable lengths to frame one of her tutors. Michael Patterson, this from his wife. He had quite a number of children and stepchildren, apparently. He was, I think, about 78 or 79, certainly 78 at least. But he appears to have died suddenly for no reason. I may put some of my correspondence with him online at some point, but I don't think it's appropriate to do so at the moment. We had some very interesting suggestions about how to deal with false allegations and allegations of rape. So anyway, Michael Patterson has died. There will be apparently a celebration of his life on 8th of November. His Facebook account is still being used by his wife, and that's Michael Patterson. Nice guy, sad loss. Right, I'm going to deal here in this broadcast, live hangout with. I hope you can hear me. If you can hear me, if you can't hear me, please let me know. It's very important. But I'm going to deal here with statistics, false rape statistics in particular, and how they how they are used by the sexual grievance industry. First, I want to introduce two concepts which may be helpful to you in this connection. One is the big lie, and the other is the woozle effect. The big lie was enunciated by Adolf Hitler in 1923 in Mein Kampf. Unsurprisingly, he accused Jews of using it, but if he'd universalized it rather than simply projecting it onto Jews, no one could have taken issue with him. The big lie is something which is used in politics. It's used by political lobbies, by all sorts of lobbies. The anti-smoking industry is some of their statistics are absurd, and also by individuals. For example, if a man is accused of murdering his wife, that's could be classed as a big lie if he hasn't, but it may be that people don't believe it. But if he's accused of murdering a dozen people, being a serial killer, then how can all this how can this be untrue? A better example of the big lie is I think psychic fraud. As I'm speaking now, there'll be people in this country and all around the world taking money from gullible, at times vulnerable people on the pretext of their speaking to the dead and the dead speaking to them. Psychics, spirit mediums, channelers. This is all garbage. The roots of modern spiritualism are quite recent. They originated in Hydesville, New York, with the Fox sisters. Of course, spiritualism itself goes back thousands of years. But we can all talk to the dead, but do the dead talk to us? So, I mean, that is a big lie, and it's something which is often used by the sexual grievance industry, particularly with statistics. And the other thing I mentioned is the woozle effect. This comes from Winnie the Pooh story. They're walking around a tree, and there's footsteps and footprints, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually they realise that they're following their own footprints around the tree. The woozle effect, you get this in citations. Now, if I tell you that the Battle of Hastings was 1066, I give you a citation for an encyclopedia, or even somebody talking on YouTube. You can trace that back to an original document, a chronicler of Sabrina's chronicler, and we can be fairly certain that the Battle of Hastings was actually 1066. With a lot of social sciences, you find people putting citations, and now social sciences aren't like mathematics. You know, if you take something fairly simple, something you'll have heard of, the theorem of Pythagoras, this can be proved mathematically, and you put that in a journal, you can prove it. But a lot of social science citations, things in social sciences, are very, very speculative, and a lot of them are just rubbish. And in particular, statistics, and statistics in particular, when they get into into the literature, they're cited by one person after another, and eventually they become generally accepted. Well, you'll find, I'll give a real example from contemporaneous one. You may have been following the affair in the United States with Elizabeth Warren and her absurd claim to have a Cherokee in her family way back. There's a video, some on YouTube, some woman from, I beg your pardon, very sorry. I've had a rough week. But there was some woman from a Cherokee nation or Cherokee tribe who was slagging off Warren, and then she said, Pocahontas is part of our culture, and she's been used. Pocahontas was a victim. She was raped. No, she wasn't. She was brought to England. She married an Englishman. She died young. And then she says, out of the blue, one Native American woman in 3 has been raped, and most of these rapes are carried out by non-natives. They throw this rubbish around like confetti. Now, with it's my contention that a lot of rape statistics, a lot of false rape allegations are enormous. What we're told is that the majority of rapes, the vast majority of rapes, go unreported, because victims, survivors are terrified they won't be believed, and there's the phenomenon of so-called delayed reporting. And of course, the other thing is that there are too few prosecutions and far too few convictions. Juries are acquitting when they shouldn't acquit. Now, with let me say murders. Now, murder is thankfully a very rare crime. If you want to know how many convictions there were for murder in England, Wales, or the United States, Canada, or wherever, India, or wherever, 10 years ago, you go to Whitaker's Almanac will have that. The Office for National Statistics will have a figure in it. All sorts of official publications which will tell you how many convictions there were for murder in a particular year. Now, some of these convictions may be overturned at a later date. The picture isn't entirely accurate because you can have, say, 3 people convicted of one murder, the same murder. But we can be fairly accurate that the number of murder convictions is accurate. I mean, that is that as it's collated from government sources, it should be 100% accurate. The actual number of murders might be slightly different because there may be murders that have gone undetected or unnoticed. Maybe murders which were sort of suicides. There may actually be suicides which are look as though are murders. You know, if somebody's found floating in the river, or a body is found in the woods with no, you know, if a skeleton is found some time later and there are no obvious marks of foul play, and you know, predators, foxes and other animals tend to walk away with bits of body. So the number of actual murders will be slightly different, but it won't be that different. Now, if you take theft, probably the majority of thefts go unreported, because if somebody breaks into your car, and steals something, you are you going to bother report it? Unless it's something really valuable, you're probably not going to report it. You're certainly not going to report it to the insurance company, because you'll lose your no claims bonus. And trivial stuff. I mean, if you lose your wallet, I mentioned this last week when I was talking about false memories. But if you lose your wallet, can you say for certain your pocket was picked, or did you lose it? Did you drop it somewhere? And if you have school kids in the local corner shop stealing Mars bars and stuff, is the shopkeeper going to report them? Probably not. You just ban them from the shop. So there are probably probably very, very many thefts not reported and going unnoticed and unsolved. Now, the sexual grievance industry would have us believe that rape is a like theft, that most of them are not reported, though not for them being trivial. The reality is that rape is like murder. Very few rapes go unreported. Very few go undetected. Some do go undetected. If a woman is so drunk, she can't she can't remember if she's had sex or had sex voluntarily. That's she could be raped. A few years ago, there was a nurse at St John Radcliffe, the John Radcliffe Infirmary in Oxford, raped 2 women patients under anaesthetic. And it was only when he was arrested for something else they looked at his phone, and he very conveniently filmed himself raping these women. And he got 16 years, which was not a day too long. But most rapes are not like that. Now let's look at some. We've covered the big lie. When they're fabricating rape statistics, a lot of advocates hide behind semantics. They'll talk about sexual assault, and then they'll conflate this with rape, and they'll conflate rape with attempted rape. Attempted rape could be a guy offers to buy a woman a drink and she thinks it was drugged. So you might have been trying to slip her a drink, a date rape drug. So that can be classed as all sorts of silly stuff. Unwanted touching, that's a great one. 75% of women who experience unwanted touching at work. Some they even class this as sexual assault, which becomes transmogrified into rape. But let's find this entry here. Right, on December 18th, 1943, an American newspaper reported half of rape cases reported a bunk police probe shows. This was a senior police officer expressing his view that at that time half of rape cases were fabricated. And in 1943, rape meant rape. It didn't mean I think I was too drunk to consent, or well, I didn't really like that, so it did. None of this date rape nonsense. So back in the 1940s, and in some states, rape was capital then. So even at that time, there were false allegations on a scale, and there was no anonymity then. Now, the modern nonsense about rape being endemic really springs from the advent of second wave feminism. There was talk about it being difficult to report, difficult to prove then, before then. But it's only really with the usual source quote is Susan Brown Miller, whose book Against Our Will I read shortly after it came out, actually back in the 1970s. It's a horrible book. and she said that this is the book, or one of the cultural milestones, if you like, the gay race, the concept of date rape or acquaintance rape. Before then, rape was considered something that was perpetrated on a woman by a stranger, perhaps in a public place, perhaps in her own home, or if not a total stranger, then by someone she hardly knew. But she came up with a figure of 2%, which is complete nonsense. Anne Burgess and her collaborator in their 1974 study, Rape Trauma Syndrome, which I alluded to last week, and you'll find the original study on the timeline. They came up with the idea that there were lots of women walking around suffering from silent rape. They've been raped, but they hadn't reported it, and they're suffering. They're traumatized. I said a lot of things they do, they hide behind semantics, and with the statistics, now this is I'll play a short clip here. This is loony feminist Kat Banyard being interviewed by her publisher for, where is it, if I can find this. This is for her book, The Equality Illusion. She's putting on her best damsel voice. Listen to this. It's coming, come on.
100,000 women are raped every single year in the UK alone. 100,000 women are raped every single year in the UK alone.
That is complete rubbish. That quote, she got that quote from. It appears in the annual abstract of, where is it? It appears in a government publication, and because it appears in a government publication, they call it an official statistic. It's a sexual offence, but this is actually this so-called statistic is based on it isn't a survey of actual convictions. Obviously, it's based on interviewing women by asking them if they've been asking audiences if they've been women if they've been raped, if they've ever been raped, and then extrapolating this. When I come to discuss the scope of rape, we'll see how this sort of nonsense is used. So that they hide behind semantics. Here's another example here. With any, where's this? Lissac, where is it? Here it is. With this is not unique to the sexual grievance industry, but if you expand the definition of something sufficiently, you can include almost anything in it. Like if you expand the definition of rape, you can include, say, attempted rape, sexual assault, or even non-physical stuff. Similarly, if you narrow the definition, you can define it almost out of existence. In this publication, this is false allegations of sexual assault. Assault has been misspelt. Analysis of 10 years of reported cases. This is by a Mangina academic named Lissac and others. And it gives a definition, and the word definition. The definition of a false allegation. The determination that a report of sexual assault is false can be made only if the evidence establishes that no crime was committed or attempted. This determination can be made only after thorough investigation. This should not be confused with an investigation that fails to prove a sexual assault occurred. So, when he played semantics. In that case, the investigation will be labelled unsubstantiated. The determination that a report is false must be supported by evidence the assault did not happen. And this is where they start playing games. Evidence the assault did not happen might include, for example, physical evidence and or statements from credible witnesses that contradict key aspects of a victim's account. Well, in that case, the victim was not a victim. Such evidence would be distinct from the more general credibility evidence. For example, a delayed report and apparent inconsistency in the victim's statement, which has often been used by police investigators to discount the rate of a victim's report. A case in which the victim decides not to cooperate with investigators. Victims make such decisions for many reasons. Yes, they do. Usually, when it's apparent the police are taking her seriously, and they are carrying out a full investigation, and she thinks, "Oh my God, what have I done?" If I can find this one. Where is it? Bennett. How many Bennetts are there? Catherine Bennett, empty for November 24th, 2013. Catherine Bennett was a co-worker of Dustin Toth, and she claimed he'd kidnapped her from a parking lot at Windsor, Colorado, and raped her. And what happened was the police arrested him. He spent some time in behind. Well, he was arrested anyway, and they carried out a fuller investigation. And he lost his job, the poor bloke. And eventually, they found out that she'd lied. She made it up. I believe she also inflicted injuries on herself. She claims to have been abducted, drugged, and raped. So it's a very serious allegation. When they carried out a full investigation, they realised that she was lying. So, and you find this often with women. That genuine rape victims generally do not recant. Now, having said that, this is very general. I'll give a few examples here of cases in which women have recanted genuine allegations. This is on February 5th, 1990. Nicole Tuttle, this is an American case. She flagged down a motorist, and she was obviously in some distress. Said she'd been kidnapped and raped. She said this happened to a lorry driver. Well, the police were on the ball. They stopped a number of lorries. For some reason, the lorry was in the area, still in the area, and they identified the lorry concern. They asked her, "Is this the guy?" And she said no. But she'd been she hadn't just been raped, she'd been abused, and she'd been chained up in the back of this lorry. And it was instead of investigating the lorry, the police took her home. And it turned out this guy hadn't just raped her, he was actually a serial killer. His name was Robert Rhodes. She refused to identify him. So, I mean, it does happen. I've got another couple of cases here. That was Nicole Tuttle. There's a case. Connotations. No. There was a case. A case of a young woman named Marshall, Linda Marshall. Let me find this. Linda Marshall. Right. So, yeah. Linda Marshall. Now, she this was again in the 1990s. She contacted the police. She she walked into, I think, a police station, claimed to have been kidnapped by 3 men in a van, 3 men in a white van, and raped. Police looked at it, and they soon realised she was lying, or she wasn't telling them. Well, they thought she was lying. She wasn't telling the whole truth, and eventually, I think she claimed that she dropped the case anyway, and it turned out she really had been kidnapped. She'd been kidnapped by a woman named Shaw, is it? She was kidnapped by Michelle Massoud. Well, she was kidnapped by two people. One of them a woman. I think she knew them both, and she. What happened was the guy raped her. They took compromising photographs of her, and they ended up, because she hadn't told the truth and the full truth. But by the time they were caught, they'd murdered a young woman. Actually, murdered a young woman. That was in California. And another amazing case, Colleen Stan. There's a video about her on YouTube, a documentary, The Girl in the Box. Colleen Stan, Stan. She was kidnapped by a guy who might be described as a psycho, and his wife, who was totally under his thumb, and they imprisoned her for years. And if you call it brainwashing or whatever you want to call it, eventually she got a job working in a cleaning job in a local hotel, and she was going back to being. I mean, it's really bizarre, but these are truly exceptional cases. Most rapes, most genuine rapes, are not like that at all. With Lissac and Company, the case of which the victim appears to make inconsistent statements, or even lies about certain aspects of the case. Traumatized individuals tend to recall events in a fragmented fashion, which makes apparent inconsistencies likely. Well, this is not new. This scam trauma, and a latest scam, tonic immobility, which I'll discuss at a later date, is it's nothing new. It's nothing new. There was case law going back decades, certainly on identification. I mean, there was 1979 was the was it Tomlin? Is it English case? Tobin? No. What was it? So there were 3 cases heard at once, and some I forget it's a Tomlin warning or something like that. For identification, and there's also things of trauma. Back in 1908, and you'll find this book on the Internet Archive, On the Witness Stand, an excellent book by Hugo Münsterberg about crime and about psychology. He makes the point, for example, that somebody, a victim has been knifed, stabbed, may feel a dull blow, and somebody, indeed, as you probably know, somebody who's been stabbed or even shot may not feel any pain at all, may not realise they've been shot. The case of one bloke who's walking around with a broken neck for months. didn't realise, well, obviously not in a big way. So this is really a total scam. So that's their latest scam. Right, let me talk about the scope of rape. This is a so-called study. You'll find this on a timeline, April 1987. The scope of rape by Mary Koss and others. This is an American study that purports to show that 1 woman in 5 has been or will be sexually assaulted during her lifetime or during college and in the first year of college. They keep parroting this nonsense. Sometimes it's 1 in 5, 1 in 4. I think I heard Gloria Allred say 1 in 2. And she sent out a questionnaire to I can't remember entirely to women, but sexual intercourse was defined as penetration of a woman's vagina, no matter how slight, by a man's penis. Ejaculation was not required. Okay, there are 10 questions here, and I don't know how many feminist airheads answered them, but there were the 10 questions. The first 5 relate to attempted rape, and the second 5 relate to actual rape. Now, there's question 6. Have you given in to sexual intercourse when you didn't want to because you were overwhelmed by a man's continual arguments and pressure? What does that mean? What does that mean? Come on, baby, let's make it. Come on, please, come on. Just, come on now. I mean, that might be construed as begging. Have you had sexual intercourse when you didn't want to because a man used his position of authority to make you? Again, that is so. You find that a lot of women come onto their bosses. To give just one example, Robin Cook, the politician who was a minister, resigned on principle of the Iraq War. He married his secretary, which didn't go down at all well with his wife. Divorced his wife, married his secretary. But this sort of thing happens a lot. Have you had sexual intercourse when you didn't want to because a man gave you alcohol or drugs? What does that even mean? A guy bought you a drink. It's confusing consent with desire. So if you take out that question alone, it invalidates the whole questionnaire. But it's complete nonsense, and this is a citation. This is where the Woos effect comes in. This is cited by other publications, and people who cite it get cited, and it's just complete nonsense. What they've done of late to try to enlist male support for the erosion of due process is they claim there's a claim now that not just 85 to 100,000 women are raped every year in England and Wales, but the figure maybe 9,000 or 12,000 men are raped every year. It's rubbish. What happens sometimes is that heterosexual men engage in homosexual activity, and it's it's not something that most heterosexuals like to admit to. This is a subject I find male homosexuality particularly repulsive, having grown up in the 1960s. But men will claim they have been raped, sodomized, when they've had consensual sex. Now it does happen. I mean, it's the same as actual rapes do happen, but they brought in these ludicrous figures to because men's rights activists, if you visit A Voice for Men, they peddle their own victim narrative. Men are innocent, men are victims of everything. And the feminists are trying to say enlist male support for what they want eventually is for any man to be convicted on the say-so of a woman with absolutely no just because she says I was raped by this man last night, last year, 10 years ago. They want a man to be convicted of rape, his life ruined, and that actually does happen. You know that actually does happen in UK. It's very bad. In Canada, it's even worse. With statistics, women against rape are fond of their false rape statistics. The other thing you have to remember is that when a woman makes an allegation of rape, even if she retracts it, even if it's proved to be, even if it's proved that it never happened, she's always a victim. She's always innocent, and she's always a victim. Let's find this. I'll find that wrong. It's can't find it offhand at the moment. But Louise Nicholas is in New Zealand. She's considered to be an advocate. She's actually a head case. She was a groupie, a police groupie, who she accused a lot of police officers of other things, and the case eventually, there was a film made about it called Consent, the Louise Nicholas story. Eventually, somebody was convicted of something. The police officers have been having sex with. I mean, I'll have to make a separate video about this, but there are some women who find the uniform attractive, and everything that goes with it. Police officers, military personnel. Police officers tend to attract a certain type of group, a certain type of woman, and at times they abuse their authority. Louise Nicholas, she there's an article. She a woman is in New Zealand falsely accused somebody of. She made a false rape allegation, which I say it turned out to be clearly false, and she was drawn into to local press for a quote, and she said that most victims had most women who accuse rape of actually really being abused, but she just accused someone because she wanted the abuse to stop. And it turned out the woman concerned had been playing away for her boyfriend or something. So it's complete nonsense. But if I want to consider now a little bit of types of rape allegations that are likely to be false. There are, I've got a separate page on the timeline for types of false rape allegations. Allegations of group sex. Women do get engaged. Women are gang raped. It does happen. But there have been many cases in which women, probably the most notorious is the Hofstra University case. A woman, not necessarily a young woman, will get a collection of dudes and invite them to run a train on her, and then at some point these women realise that it wasn't such a good idea. I don't think it's a good idea for men either. Certainly any woman who will take on two men at once is not worth having sex with, period. Or two men, one after the other. You go a second. But stay away from women like that, guys. Asylum cases. Any woman who's claiming asylum, and as part of that application claims to be raped or otherwise sexual abuse, is almost certainly lying. These women are coached. Women Against Rape in the UK, they the statistic. There's a detention centre for asylum sneakers. I forget what it's called now. They claim that 70% of women who seek asylum in the UK have been raped or sexually assaulted. No, 70% may claim they've been raped or sexually assaulted. Almost all of these women are lying. Another thing I say about these women is that a lot of them are particularly odious. They're professional criminals, and when I say professional, let me find this one. What is it? They flit around the world on forged passports and fake documents. Now, since 2011, it was never easy to get forged official documents anyway. It's obviously easier in some countries than others, but ask yourself this: could you obtain a false passport? Could you obtain forged official documentation of past muster? These women, they flit around the world on okay, I mean, international travel is relatively cheap, but it isn't. You know, if you're going to make a living out of it, isn't cheap. And they flit around the world. Money seems to be no object. A classic case is a woman named Amina Muse, who sorry about this. I have late nights, but I've been skipping the afternoon to catch up. Amina Muse, now she was a woman who turned up in the UK with a sob story. Her brothers had been murdered in Somalia. She was gang raped, yada yada yada, and it turned out that she was living in Sweden in 1995 when it supposedly happened. Well, she went by a different name. They can't even be sure if her name was Amina Muse. And she was given a 4.5 year sentence at Harrow Crown Court for a massive fraud. And almost all of these women, they're asylum sneakers. They tell us sound like that. They're not somebody you want in your country. White nations tend to tolerate them because of Germany, especially, white guilt. But when they try it on in places like India or Japan, they get short shrifted. Japan doesn't stand for any of this nonsense. This is a point which has been made by a guy named TFM and also by Rouchevi and by others. TFM says any public rape allegation is false. If there's no police report, it's a false allegation. I'll go further than that. I would say if there is no contemporaneous police report, the allegation is false. There can be genuine cases of there are some celebrities out there who are people in positions of in such positions that if they're publicly accused, then there will be substantial publicity. But generally speaking, any woman who makes an allegation, or any man who makes an allegation of rape or sexual assault, certainly of rape, without filing a contemporaneous police report, should be taken as lying. Reports in where there are divorce proceedings, in particular where there are contested custody proceedings, reports there are likely to be false. There's an excellent documentary called "Divorce is Deadliest Weapon." You'll find a link to the archive, the full version, on the timeline. In that, a woman barrister, this is about 1995, I think it was, estimated that 80% of allegations made of a sexual nature made in contested proceedings are false, and these include obviously for very despicable allegations of child sexual abuse, and she gives examples of how these women go about bringing allegations. Well, they don't always come out and accuse the guy directly. Any delayed report is likely to be false, because if there was no delay, there was no rape, there was no delay. What sort of allegations are likely to be true? Well, if she looks like a rape victim and she acts like one, she probably is. I'll qualify that slightly. If a woman dials 999, 911 or whatever, or if she turns up at a hospital and she's in physical distress, whatever her mental state, she claims she's been raped, she probably has been raped. Again, not all cases are like that. Some women, deranged women, go so far as to inflict at times quite serious injuries on themselves. And the case of Rhiannon Brooker was outrageous. She inflicted injuries on herself and drip-fed lies to her circle for months before framing her mark, Paul Fenton. There was a woman named Alison Welfare. It was a case in London who she went to considerable lengths to frame her former lover. But generally speaking, older women are more credible than younger women. And if a woman is over 50 and she claims to have been attacked in her own home and raped, she's probably telling the truth. Again, not all. There can be spectacular exceptions. Probably the most spectacular was the case of Wayman Camille. Look him up. That's a truly remarkable case. He was falsely accused, and he spent a long time in prison. And you'll see what happened, how he got out. It's truly, but generally speaking, if a woman, if she looks like she's been, most rape victims resist after a fashion. Okay, if there's a group of men, even then, a woman will often resist. But if a woman is attacked in her own home, she's got a knife outside, you can understand her not resisting. Even then, some do. But most victims resist. Resistance generates physical evidence. Be it in a completed rape, there may be semen, of course, but the guy's DNA will be all over her, and there'll be other evidence, maybe CCTV evidence, maybe people heard stuff. Most victims fight their attackers, but you have to allow for some delay, an hour or two, if a woman is shocked. But most mature women do report, and they do report promptly, and for that reason they're credible. And I think you'll find, leave aside these rubbish statistics that are foisted on us, that most men who are caught bang to rights, most rapists do actually plead guilty. Where there is a not guilty plea, if alcohol is involved, it's very dangerous for any man in this current climate to have sex with a woman who's had anything to drink or any quantity of drugs. So rape is a violent act. It's a violent crime. Most women are not damsels. They never have been damsels. Even when they were damsels, they weren't damsels. This mythology of this, just froze, this tonic immobility, and this being too afraid to report. A woman who reports promptly is credible, and is to be believed. She may be lying. There are lots of cases on the timeline of women who have reported promptly and have got bruises to show for it and are lying through their teeth. But as a general rule, if a woman looks the part of a victim, whatever her mental state, she's probably been raped. So anyway, that's the false rape statistics. The other things I would say about why I believe rape is so, they're so wildly exaggerated is last week I read a case of from Florida campus where I think it's 40 women claimed to have been raped on this campus during the course of a year, but only one reported it. So that's ridiculous, I mean, you wouldn't expect a campus in Africa to be well. To say that some of these African women are getting brainwashed the same as Western women, but a really dangerous area of a notorious city, you wouldn't expect that many rapes. Lots of reports, especially false rape reports. There's a number on the timeline. You'll find a number of video reports. You'll find what often happens is that when the reporters, especially local reporters, they'll go out in the street, they'll interview women or locals, and they'll be told it's nothing like that's ever happened around here. It's very rare. I think it was a rape. I live in Venner Road, Sydenham. I think it was a rape here, not far from me, many years ago, in which I think I got 12 years. But there was also a murder down this road a few years ago. A bloke was sitting on his wall outside his house, and a junkie came by asking for a cigarette, and when he refused, he battered him to death. It's Alan White, his name was. There are areas where there's violent crimes. There's areas which are known for muggings, for robberies, even for riots. But whenever it's an allegation of sexual assault, the talking heads, they'll stop people in the street or neighbours, and they'll say, "Well, no, I've done it. Well, never heard of anything like that happening around here." And that's another thing that leads me to believe it's all flannel. Anyway, that's about all I can say about false rape statistics at the moment. I'll be going for an hour now. Anyone want to ask me any questions? I presume you can. I'm hoping you can all hear me. There's 5 of you here, so if you want to ask me any questions, feel free to either ask now, or you can email me, or you can leave a comment. I will set this video to private until I've edited it. There's the first 20 minutes or so, which is not just this guy talking. If anyone would like to make any suggestions about a different time, a different day for the live hangout. I may move it to Sunday. It's been a suggestion I should move it to Sunday, perhaps earlier in the evening. And as I said last week, I'm amenable to doing 2 broadcasts in 1 week. If any of you would like to comment on that, please share this video. And again, if you didn't join at the beginning, Professor Michael Patterson, who was falsely accused of rape in 1991, is on the timeline. Amazing case. I've heard whether he died on Monday. I think he was 78. He was a good age anyway, but sudden death, and I shall miss him. Commiserations, those deepest sympathy to his family, his big family. I'll be okay. I've waffled on for long enough. I say, anyone like to send me any questions? Donations would also be appreciated. And if anyone could tell me how to sort out this, I'll be looking at this to get this chat to save and display with a video. But I think I may be hiding to nothing there. But at the moment, these videos are just me yakking and taking the occasional question. Okay, well, thank you for coming. We've got 5 tonight. Hopefully it'll be a lot more next time. I will early next week, I will issue a tweet and put a notice on this channel about when will be the next live hangout. I haven't decided what the subject will be. It may well be celebrity false allegations. There's been so many of those, with or without Me Too. So thank you for coming, and I hope to see you again soon.